It was Christmas Eve, and the snow was falling in thick, lazy flakes, blanketing everything in white. The air smelled like pine and cookies. We'd baked way too many earlier that day. My sister Jenny and I had a plan: stay up all night to catch Santa in the act. It was something we joked about for years, but this time we were serious. Jenny's 8, and I'm 10, so it felt like this was our last chance to do something magical before we were too old for it. Mom and Dad were already asleep upstairs. We'd snuck into the living room with a pile of blankets, snacks, and my tablet, and we sat by the big window, waiting. At first it was fun. We whispered and giggled, imagining what we'd say when we saw him. Would he be jolly and round, or would he look different? We were so focused on our own house that we almost missed it. It started with movement across the street. Jenny nudged me, her eyes wide. "Look, over there." Through the frosted window, we could see the neighbor's house. Mr. and Mrs. Carson were old and quiet. They rarely even turned on their porch light. But now, there was someone climbing through their living room window. I squinted. The figure wore red, and for a split second, my heart jumped. "Santa?" Jenny whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. But something was off. The figure wasn't round or jolly. It was tall, thin, and moved too quickly, more like a shadow than a person. The sack slung over its shoulder didn't look like it was full of toys. It looked heavy, and the way it climbed in through the window, it wasn't magical. It was frantic, jerky, like whoever it was had done this before. "That's not Santa," I muttered, pulling Jenny back from the window. "But who is it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," I said, my stomach twisting. "But it's not good." We watched, frozen, as the figure disappeared inside the Carsons' house. For a moment, everything was still. Then, out of nowhere, we heard it. A scream. It wasn't loud. It was muffled, like someone was trying to keep it quiet, but it was enough to send chills down my spine. Jenny clutched my arm. "What do we do?" Before I could answer, there was a loud thud, followed by another scream, then a gunshot. Jenny gasped, and I yanked her away from the window. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my tablet and dialed 911. The operator answered, her voice calm and professional. 911, what's your emergency?" I stammered out the words. "There's someone in our neighbor's house. We heard screams and a gunshot." The operator asked for our address and said the police were on their way. I hung up, my heart pounding. Jenny and I huddled together, too scared to go back to the window. When the police arrived, their flashing lights painted the snow in eerie shades of blue and red. 2 officers knocked on our door, and I told them everything we'd seen. They nodded, but their expressions didn't give anything away. A few minutes later, they came back from the Carsons' house. "There's no sign of anyone inside," one of them said. "The house is locked up tight." "But we saw someone," I protested. "We heard screaming and a gunshot." The officer frowned. "It's Christmas Eve, kid. Maybe you were watching a scary movie and got spooked." I clenched my fists. "We weren't imagining it." The other officer knelt down, his tone softer. "Listen, I know it's exciting to play detective, but leave this to us, okay? You kids stay safe and keep your doors locked." They left, and Jenny and I stared at each other, stunned. How could they not believe us? We'd seen it. We'd heard it. But now, it was like it had never happened. Jenny was shaking, her eyes wide with fear. "What if they come to our house next?" she whispered. I didn't know what to say. The thought of that shadowy figure climbing into our window made my skin crawl. But then an idea hit me. "We'll make traps," I said. "Like in the movie." Jenny's eyes lit up. "Like Home Alone?" "Exactly. If they try to come here, they won't know what hit them." We spent the next hour setting up defenses. We tied string to the Christmas tree ornaments and hung them near the front door. If someone opened it, they'd crash to the floor, making a racket. We propped Dad's golf clubs against the back door, ready to topple onto anyone who tried to sneak in. Jenny had the idea to use our Nerf guns. We loaded them with marbles and set them on the stairs, pointed at the hallway. I even rigged up a tripwire with some fishing line from the garage. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. When we were done, we sat in the living room, exhausted, but feeling a little safer. "They won't get us," Jenny said, her voice firmer now. "Not with our traps." I nodded, trying to believe her. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. It was around 3 a.m. when the noises started again. A faint scratching sound, like nails on glass. Jenny and I bolted upright. It was coming from the back door. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a fireplace poker, and motioned for Jenny to stay behind me. The scratching stopped, replaced by a soft knock. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer, just another knock, louder this time. Jenny grabbed my arm. "Don't open it," she whispered. "I'm not going to," I said, inching closer to the door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Then, from the other side of the house, we heard a crash. The ornaments. Someone had triggered the trap at the front door. Jenny screamed, and I pulled her behind the couch. We crouched there, clutching each other, as the sound of footsteps echoed through the house. They were slow, deliberate, like whoever it was knew exactly where we were. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I peeked over the couch, my breath catching in my throat. The living room was empty, but the front door was wide open. Snow swirled inside, leaving wet footprints that stopped abruptly in the middle of the room. "Where did they go?" Jenny whispered. "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "But we need to call the police again." This time, the police arrived faster. I told them everything. The traps, the noise, the footprints. They searched the house top to bottom, but again, they found nothing. No footprints, no broken ornaments, nothing. The lead officer gave me a stern look. "You've got a vivid imagination, kid. Maybe it's time to get some sleep." They left, and Jenny and I were alone again. The house felt colder, emptier. The traps we'd set were still there, untouched. It didn't make sense. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I must have dozed off at some point because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. The sun was shining, the snow sparkled like diamonds, and everything looked normal. But something wasn't right. Jenny was sitting by the window, staring outside. "What are you looking at?" I asked. She pointed to the Carsons' house. The living room window was open, and something red was caught on the sill, a piece of fabric fluttering in the breeze. My stomach dropped. "Stay here," I told Jenny. I crossed the street, my boots crunching in the snow. The Carsons' house looked just as empty as the police had said, but when I got closer, I saw it. A smear of red on the windowsill. Not fabric. Blood. I ran back to the house, my heart racing. Jenny was still by the window, but she wasn't looking at the Carsons anymore. She was looking at something else. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to me, her face pale. "There's someone in the woods," she said. "Watching us." I looked out the window. At first I didn't see anything, just trees and snow. But then, in the shadows, I saw it. A figure in red. It didn't move. It just stood there, staring at our house. And then, as if it knew I was watching, it raised a hand and waved.